Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into incentive systems and behavioral change.
Oh, fascinating
Yeah,
stuff.
and I thought this would be particularly interesting for you as a philosopher.
Most definitely.
We've got a whole stack of research papers and studies here,
Yeah.
and I'm really excited to unpack some of these complex ideas with you.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating topic. Just thinking about it, right? The notion that we can influence behavior through, carefully designed
Right,
systems, it
yeah.
just has profound implications, not just for, the obvious like psychology, but,
Right.
for ethics, social structures, even political philosophy.
Absolutely. And, we often think about these incentive systems
Yeah.
in a very simplistic way. Like we always hear those metaphors,
Right.
carrot and stick.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
classic carrot and stick.
But it's got to be more nuanced than that.
Oh, absolutely. It is far more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
And, one of the common starting points in a lot of behavioral science is this idea that, behavior is governed by its consequences,
Yeah.
which on the surface, seems straightforward enough.
Right.
But then you come across research like Bandura and Barab's study
Yeah, I remember that study.
with children imitating an adult's actions, even when those actions were never rewarded.
Yeah, they just kept at it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they thought they could somehow change the adults' minds, even though there's really no reason to believe that.
Exactly. And it's like, it really challenges that simple cause and effect model,
Yeah.
right? And it highlights the power of belief and anticipation.
Right.
What we expect will happen
Yeah.
can be a stronger motivator than what actually transpires.
Yeah, and that's where I think the philosophical implications start to get really interesting.
Absolutely.
Because if our actions are driven by beliefs, even erroneous ones,
Right.
it raises questions about free will, the nature of reality,
Right.
the power of the individual to shape the world around us.
Absolutely. It suggests that, we're not just passive respondents to stimuli,
Right.
but we're active agents, constantly interpreting information, forming expectations, and then acting on those interpretations, even if they're flawed.
It's like we're living in a simulation.
Well, yeah.
If our beliefs can shape our experiences, even if those beliefs don't align with some objective truth, what does that say about the nature of reality itself?
That's a very deep question. Very, very deep question.
Yeah.
But it speaks to the interconnectedness of belief and social reality.
Right.
You think about the Snyder study, for example,
Okay.
found that people acting on false beliefs could actually influence the behavior of those around them.
So it's not just that, my beliefs affect my actions.
Right.
So they can actually create this ripple effect and
Yeah.
influence the social environment and even shift collective perceptions of what's real.
Exactly. And it challenges us to think about the power of individual agency,
Right.
not just in terms of achieving personal goals, but in shaping the very fabric of society.
Right. And then this leads us to, even a broader point about the types of incentives that drive us.
Yeah.
It's not just about basic, biological needs, food or shelter.
Right, right. It's a whole spectrum of motivators,
Yeah.
right? Everything from sensory pleasures like enjoying a beautiful piece of music
Yeah.
to social rewards like gaining approval or status within a group,
Right. Or just the satisfaction of,
or even
accomplishing a task or
exactly
mastering a skill.
mastering a skill. Yeah, you think about Premack's work,
Okay.
showing how the effectiveness of a reward can change instantly based on its relationship to other rewards.
Okay.
Like something that's highly motivating in one context might lose its appeal entirely
Right.
if it's paired with something even more desirable.
It's like when a kid, gets a toy
Right.
and they think it's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And then they see another kid with a better toy.
Exactly. And suddenly it's
Yeah,
like,
oh, I don't want this anymore.
yeah. Yeah, it highlights the fluidity of our desires, right?
Right.
And the role of context in shaping our perception of what's rewarding.
And this is where I think, this idea of self-efficacy comes into play.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the incentives themselves.
Right.
It's, do I even believe I can achieve them?
Right. That belief can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. People are more likely to pursue challenging goals if they believe they can succeed even in the face of uncertainty or setback.
You have to believe in yourself.
You have to believe in yourself. And this connects to another important concept, self-regulation.
Okay.
That ability to use internal standards and self-evaluation to guide our actions.
It's like an inner compass.
Exactly like an inner compass that helps us stay on course even when external rewards are sparse or inconsistent.
And for you as a philosopher, this raises interesting questions about self-control.
Oh, absolutely.
This pursuit of excellence the role of internal motivation in shaping a virtuous life.
It's a very rich area of inquiry.
Yeah,
Very rich area.
definitely.
So, speaking of internal motivation,
Yeah.
this kind of leads us nicely into this, this whole debate about extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation.
Right, yeah. This is a question that's been around forever.
Yeah.
How do you foster a genuine love of learning, a thirst for knowledge when there's all these, external pressures and rewards?
Right. And the research we've been looking at, suggests that it's not really this simple dichotomy.
Right.
It's not like it's either
Mhm.
external rewards can actually enhance intrinsic motivation
Yeah.
under the right circumstances.
There's that research showing that rewards for participation are more likely to decrease interest,
Right.
but then rewards for, achieving something meaningful might actually increase it.
Exactly. It's not just about the presence or absence of rewards, right? It's about how those rewards are structured
Yeah.
and what message they convey.
Right.
Rewards that are tied to skill development,
Okay.
mastery, the achievement of, personally meaningful goals. Those can actually fuel intrinsic motivation.
So it's about aligning those external incentives with the internal drives.
Absolutely.
And you can create kind of a synergy that gets people, going towards both
Right.
personal satisfaction and external accomplishment.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important element, goal setting.
Right.
The research suggests that, challenging yet achievable goals
Yeah.
can be really powerful motivators. That
Right.
They foster this sense of competence and intrinsic interest.
But of course, not all goals are created equal.
Right, right.
If a goal is too far off or it's imposed by somebody else
Exactly.
rather than self-chosen, that can backfire.
Yeah, you got to find that sweet spot,
Yeah.
that balance between, challenge and attainability,
Right.
between external guidance and personal ownership.
It's like that whole idea of flow.
Oh, yeah.
When you're so engaged and absorbed in the activity
Yeah.
that it's both challenging and intrinsically rewarding.
That's right.
So is it that, effective goal setting is a way to unlock that?
That's a very interesting connection.
Yeah.
It suggests that, the design of incentive systems, shouldn't just consider the desired outcomes, but also the subjective experience of the individuals who are, navigating those systems.
So it's not just about compliance.
Right.
It's about fostering, engagement, creativity, a sense of fulfillment.
That's right. And, that brings us to another layer of complexity, right?
Yeah.
How do incentives operate within groups and societies?
It's not just about individual motivation anymore.
That's right. It's not just about the individual. We start to see how incentive structures are really, embedded in the very fabric of social systems.
Right.
Shaping everything from, economic behavior
Right.
to political participation to even just basic social norms.
Like the prisoner's dilemma,
Yes, exactly.
where individual incentives can sometimes lead to bad outcomes for the group.
It highlights that tension, right, between self-interest and collective well-being,
Right.
which is really at the heart of so many, social and political dilemmas.
Right. So then the design of these systems becomes really crucial.
Absolutely.
You've got different structures,
Yeah.
individualistic, collectivistic, hierarchical.
Right. Each with their own, strengths and weaknesses.
So individualistic systems, which we see a lot in capitalist societies,
Right.
those can drive innovation,
Right.
economic growth,
Mm-hmm.
but then you can have inequality,
And equality.
short-term gains over long-term sustainability.
Yeah. And then you look at, collectivist systems,
Right.
which are more common in communal societies.
Yeah.
Those can foster cooperation, social harmony.
Right.
They can also stifle individual initiative.
Right. Or be used to enforce conformity.
Exactly.
So you've got to find the right balance.
Yeah, you have to find the right balance.
How do you design something that harnesses that individual motivation, but also promotes the cooperation and fairness and shared responsibility?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yes.
It's a question that's challenged social theorists and policymakers for centuries,
Right.
and there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
But I think, the research we've been talking about does offer some valuable insights.
Okay.
For example, we've seen how group incentives
Yeah.
can be incredibly effective at, promoting collaboration,
Yeah.
a sense of community.
But they can also backfire,
Oh, absolutely.
like group projects in school,
Oh,
where
yeah.
one person does all the work,
Right. Classic example of the free rider problem.
Right. And then, what about the ethics of all of this?
Right.
As we said, incentives can be used for good and bad. They
Absolutely.
can
Sure.
motivate people to act in ways that benefit themselves and others.
Right.
But they can also be used to manipulate, exploit control.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
That even the most well-intentioned systems can have unintended consequences.
And this is where I think, the philosophical perspective is really crucial.
It really is. How do we ensure that these incentive systems
Right.
are actually aligned with our values?
Right.
That they promote ethical conduct, that they contribute to a just and flourishing society.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot to think about here, philosophically.
Oh, absolutely.
The very notion of, shaping behavior through these incentives raises profound questions about free will, moral responsibility, the role of these structures in, shaping who we are.
Big question.
Yeah, and what we become.
It makes me think about the work of, philosophers like John Rawls,
Right.
who explored, the idea of a just society
Right.
and how we might design systems that, distribute benefits and burdens fairly.
Right.
How would he view the role of incentives in shaping a just and equitable world?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It is a great question.
And I think you as a philosopher are probably the perfect person to wrestle with that.
Well, I appreciate that.
But let's maybe shift gears a little bit to a more practical question.
Okay.
How do we create lasting change? It's one thing to motivate someone in the short term,
Right.
but how do we make those changes stick?
Right. That's where the concept of approximating discordance comes in.
Right.
It's about preparing individuals for the inevitable setbacks
Right.
inconsistencies that they're going to encounter in real life situations.
So instead of trying to create this perfect environment where everything goes smoothly,
Right.
you've got to build in, some realism.
Yeah, healthy dose of realism.
Expose people to difficulties and help them develop the skills to navigate, the challenges.
Exactly. It's like training for a marathon by running on a variety of terrains.
Right.
Hills, trails, even the occasional, unexpected puddle.
Right.
You're not going to set a personal best if you only practice on a perfectly flat track.
Right.
You got to prepare for the unexpected, the uneven, the downright messy aspects of the real world.
That's a great analogy.
A trap.
So it's not just about teaching people specific skills or behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building that ability to adapt, to problem solve, to bounce back from setbacks.
And that connects back to, self-efficacy.
Right.
The more we believe in our ability to handle challenges and overcome obstacles,
Yeah.
the more likely we are to persevere, to learn from our mistakes, and to keep striving towards our goals.
So it's about mindset.
It's about mindset.
It's not just about, specific skills.
It's about cultivating that inner drive,
Right.
that sense of agency and self-belief
Yeah.
that empowers us to keep going even when the external rewards,
Right.
fade away.
And it makes me think about, those Stoics
Oh, yeah.
who emphasized accepting what you can't control and focusing on what you can.
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah, there is a lot of wisdom in that.
Especially when you're dealing with a world full of surprises and uncertainties.
And that kind of brings us back to that connection between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation.
Absolutely.
It's not either.
Yeah.
The best systems are the ones that use both and create that synergy that drives achievement and fulfillment.
Yeah. You find that sweet spot
Right.
where the external rewards and the internal drives align.
And you can't forget about those social incentives.
Of course not. The praise, the approval.
Right.
The sense of belonging.
Yeah. Mentors, peers, family members,
Absolutely.
they all contribute to that growth mindset.
That's right.
They're the cheerleaders and coaches.
I love that analogy.
They're rooting for you.
That's right.
They're supporting you along the way.
They celebrate the victories. They help you dust yourself off after a fall.
Yeah.
And they remind you why you set out on this journey in the first place.
It's creating that sense of, shared purpose,
Yeah.
collective efficacy,
And that can be incredibly powerful.
especially when you're dealing with these challenges that need, a coordinated effort.
Absolutely. But, let's step back for a moment
Okay.
and consider the bigger picture.
Okay.
If these incentive systems are so powerful and, they're woven into the fabric of our societies,
Right.
what does this mean for, our collective future?
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
We've seen that they can promote good behavior,
Absolutely.
like cooperation and altruism, but they can also be used to foster competition self-interest,
Right.
even, harmful behaviors.
It all comes down to how these systems are designed and implemented.
Right.
And this is where, I think the philosophical perspective becomes really important.
Right.
How do we ensure that they're aligned with our values, with
Yeah.
our aspirations, for a better world,
Right.
with our understanding of what it means to live a good and meaningful life?
Yeah, it's a tough question,
It is a challenging question.
but it's one worth thinking about.
Absolutely. And one that I think, as a philosopher,
Yeah.
you are uniquely equipped to tackle.
I appreciate that. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about these incentive systems, how they work, on an individual level, on a societal level. We've even, touched on some of those ethical dilemmas.
Yeah. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's worth circling back to this idea of how do we create lasting change?
Right. How do you get those changes to stick?
Yeah, it's one thing to, nudge somebody towards, a desired behavior, but how do we ensure that, those changes really become deeply ingrained,
Yeah.
part of their, everyday repertoire?
Well, and we've seen how these incentives can be, really powerful tools for change, but they can backfire if they're not designed,
Yeah,
thoughtfully.
exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the most crucial insights I think that comes out of the research is this idea of approximating discordance.
Right. Preparing for the setbacks and inconsistencies you're going to face in the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to, create this perfectly controlled environment where everything runs smoothly,
Right.
you've got to build in, a healthy dose of realism.
Yeah. Expose people to some difficulties so that they can develop the skills to deal with them.
Exactly. It's like training for a marathon.
Right.
By running on a variety of terrains,
Yeah.
hills, trails, even the occasional unexpected puddle.
Right.
You're not going to, set a personal best if you only practice on a perfectly flat track.
Right. You got to train for the real world.
You got to train for the real world.
Yeah.
Got to prepare for the unexpected, the uneven, the downright messy aspects of the real world.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
So it's not just about teaching specific skills.
Right.
It's about building that ability
Right.
to adapt to problems, to bounce back from setbacks.
And this connects back to, self-efficacy. The
Yeah.
more we believe in, our ability to handle challenges,
Right.
to overcome obstacles, the more likely we are to, persevere, to learn from our mistakes,
Right.
and to keep striving towards, our goals.
And it kind of reminds me of the Stoics.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
accepting what you can't control and focusing on what you can.
There's a lot of wisdom in that,
Yeah.
especially, when it comes to dealing with a world,
Right.
full of surprises and uncertainties.
And that brings us back to, extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation.
Absolutely.
It's not either, it's both.
It's about, finding that sweet spot, right? Where
Yeah.
those external rewards and the internal drives align.
And you can't forget social incentives.
Right.
Oh.
Praise the approval.
Right. Mentors, peers, family members, they can be so important.
Absolutely. They all play, a vital role, in fostering, that growth mindset.
Right. Encouraging people, celebrating successes.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders and
Right.
coaches,
Yeah.
all, invested in your journey
They're there for you.
and ready to offer a helping hand when you stumble.
And it creates that sense of shared purpose,
Yeah.
collective efficacy,
Absolutely. And that can be incredibly powerful.
especially when you're dealing with those challenges that need that coordinated effort.
But, let me leave you with one final thought here. As a philosopher who's, really engaged with these questions of, ethics and social structures,
No.
given everything we've talked about today,
Yeah.
about the complexities of human motivation,
Right.
the potential pitfalls of, incentive systems.
Yeah.
How can we design these structures in a way that not only promotes, the desired behaviors,
Right.
but also cultivates a sense of, shared responsibility,
Fairness.
fairness, genuine well-being for all?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
Yeah, it's something definitely worth, continuing to think about.
It really is. These incentive systems, they're all around us.
They are.
They're shaping our choices, our interactions, even, our sense of who we are.
It's a powerful thing.
It is a powerful thing. And as we become more aware of, their power and their pervasiveness,
Right.
it becomes even more important to make sure that those systems are aligned with, our values,
All right.
our aspirations for a better world, and our fundamental understanding of, what it means to live a good and meaningful life.
Well, this has been a great conversation.
I've enjoyed it.
Really
I
fascinating.
mean, it has been.
Exploring these incentive systems. I hope it's given our listeners, something to think about, some new questions to explore.
And remember, the exploration never really ends.
Right.
As we continue to learn more about, human motivation,
Yeah.
the interplay of, individual choices and social forces,
Yeah.
there's always going to be new discoveries, new challenges, new possibilities.
So keep questioning, keep exploring,
Mhm.
keep striving to make the world a better place.
That's right.
One thoughtful incentive at a time.
I like that.
Until next time, happy learning.